Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience and their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn, ads.com today.
Back in the 80s, Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary were budding filmmakers working together at a hip Los Angeles video store called Video Archives.
We didn't have a cash register for 4 years.
Yeah.
Now, they're reuniting to watch the original tapes from the Video Archives collection. Films like Dark Star, Moonraker, and many more. The Video Archives podcast is out now. Find us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Dearest fantasy readers, welcome to the Dear Fantasy Reader podcast, where two best friends, Hannah and Karen, travel through the pages of our favorite romantasy novels. Join us as we take flight into the world of the Empyrean series, diving deep into the chapters exploring characters, scenes, theories, foreshadowing, and more, taking what we've learned from the second book, Iron Flame, to reread and re-experience the first.
With that content warning and spoiler alert, we will be covering anything and everything Empyrean series to this date and any content Rebecca Yarros has given us. Also, due to the nature of these books, this podcast is rated R in content and in language.
As Rebecca Yarros says, readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note and prepare to enter Basgiath War College. First, we have an exciting announcement. We now have a Patreon.
Yay!
If you are loving our podcast and want to support us, this is one of the best ways you can do that. Your support allows us to keep investing the time and resources needed to create high quality, deep dive content. And you get some awesome perks too. We've got 4 tiers: Cadets, Dragon Riders, Feathertails, and the Empyrean Council. I love the themes. Depending on the tier, you'll get things like early access to episodes, giveaways, behind-the-scenes content, monthly live Q&As, access to an exclusive Discord channel, a personalized note from Karen and myself, and even more coming soon. You can check out the full list of benefits for each tier in the link in our show notes.
If you are not able to subscribe right now, there's still plenty of ways to support us. Leaving a review wherever you listen to the show makes a huge difference. It helps more people find us, which in turn helps us keep making content for you. We are keeping our Discord server accessible to everyone. You do not have to be a paid subscriber, so please join us over there for updates, theories, fun, and more.
Now, time for our summary report of chapters 22 and 23 from our personal scribe informant, Karen.
Woo. Violet is sparring with Rhiannon, discussing her frustration with Xaden and with not channeling yet. Xaden and Garrick begin sparring with their shirts off, and Violet, along with pretty much everyone else in the room, can't keep their eyes off of them.
Can you blame them?
Oh, so true. Jack Barlow confronts Violet and tries to attack her, but the boys carry him out. Xaden then lectures Violet for not wearing her dragon scale armor and tells her to stop training with a bow staff to stick with her daggers instead. Violet argues that she was sparring just fine until Taryn barged into her head. Xaden leaves, telling her to put her armor back on, and Taryn commends Violet for keeping her temper. And Darna and Taryn both agree. She's ready. That evening, Violet feels power flow into her. She's finally channeling. She quickly realizes that Taryn and Sigale's escapades are taking over her senses. She tries to leave her room, nearly jumping Liam's bones before quickly escaping to the courtyard, where she finds Xaden outside smoking churrum. After Violet asks nicely, Xaden gives her a crash course on grounding and shielding so that she can block Taryn's emotions out. Xaden tells her she is astonishing for learning so quickly, and the tension crackles through the pages. We finally get our first Xaden and Violet kiss. It only breaks with a flash of lightning, and Xaden tells her she has to go, that this is not what she wants. The next morning, Violet tells Rhiannon all about the kiss, and Rhi shows Violet her newly manifested signet, summoning. On the way to Professor Carr's class, Dane confronts Violet, but she calls him out on how he's been treating her, and he finally apologizes for some of it. We meet Professor Carr, who tells Violet he expects a groundbreaking signet from her, given Taryn's power and her siblings' legacies. Time goes by and Violet continues with her studies and training. Violet still does not have a signet yet, but she is practicing lesser magic. Violet finds out that her next sparring challenge is against the person who wants her dead more than anyone else, Jack Barlow. She confides this to Liam, but asks him not to tell Xaden, and he agrees. The moment comes to face him on the mat, and she is holding her own until Jack pushes power into her body. Were those red eyes she saw? However, our Poison Queen defends herself with Jack's biggest weakness, a vial of orange peels. She loses consciousness as Jack has an allergic reaction, and when she wakes up, who just happens to be by her side? None other than our lover boy in denial, Xaden, who asks, "Oranges?"
What a way to end that scene, too. Fantastic. Drum roll, Dragon Riders, as we are officially channeling magic. Diving right into our analysis and discussion section, we're walking through the major plot points and moments in this section of chapters, sprinkling in a couple moments of foreshadowing and light theories throughout, but most of that will be saved for that section at the end. So months have gone by, and Violet is sparring with Rhi, while mentally grappling with Taryn over not channeling his power to her yet, even though 2/3 of her year have already started channeling. Just gotta be pretty frustrating. This whole scene is setting up the tension and yearning between Violet and Xaden. Her misinterpreting that he hasn't been helping her. Girl, where? Where has he not been helping you? His frustration at her not wearing her armor, I get it, but I also get her reasoning, which is that whole back and forth of them grappling over things that, like, guys, you just need to talk it out. Her drooling over him sparring with Garrick. The way that scene is described. The whole thing was such a tension build, which Rebecca is far too good at.
Oh, she's so good at it. And the tension and the yearning, it's just the makings of an amazing romance novel.
Romantasy specifically, too, where we get this intertwined, higher stakes throwing magic in, because this is where it starts, right? Up until this point, we really haven't gotten to, through Violet, channel any sort of magic, much less like you, even the lesser. So this is where we just really, we've worked up to this moment, and it starts in this chapter. All of the things.
Such a good one.
All of the things. So, Violet is in denial over her feelings, but not in her attraction. Even before Xaden was shirtless, when he first walked by the sparring mat, Violet thought, It's impossible to rip my eyes away until he passes, though. Gods, I have it bad. And all I could think when I was reading this was, now I'm down bad crying in the sparring gym.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And same here. Oh, it's so good.
It is. And honestly, I know that we love this chapter because eventually we get our first kiss. But the first kiss is made through all of these little moments that Rebecca creates out of just, I don't even know how to explain that. The way she words things, the way she sets up the moments that they share that are so minute seeming, but they're so significant.
Oh, it's the perfect build-up. And that's like another thing with the tension. She's just given us a breadcrumb, given us another one, and then another one. And we're like dying for it by the time that we get to the kiss.
Oh, yeah. And like, you're like, I can't wait. But then you're like, I can, because part of the experience is the tension build, right? So even the way that Xaden is described when he's sparring, it was written so well that I could picture it so vividly. And I love seeing Xaden at this point through Violet's eyes now that she is 100% down bad.
For sure. She keeps trying not to be down bad, but like there's no other way to look at it. This girl is in love.
Even if she's not quite there, like romantically in love, she's in love with his body. Like there's no way, like she is for sure just 100% in at that point. Because I think Xaden fell first.
Oh,
and so
I love it.
I'm telling myself she's not there yet because I need it to have been Xaden first. But
or what about the she fell first, but he fell harder? I love that kind of trope.
What about both? He fell first and harder.
Even better.
That's my trifecta. Romance, fantasy, and that.
This is going to be very much of the episode of us just geeking out over this.
We warned you guys. We warned you. This is the first time it really gets spicy. So buckle up.
Buckle up. And continuing with our favorite boys sparring over here, Violet sees Imogen gawking at the boys and jumps to conclusions that there must be something between her and Xaden. And boy, is Violet jealous.
First of all, everyone in the room is gawking. Okay? You can't blame them. But there's also been moments where she has noticed that there's something. They're really close. The Imogen is really close with Xaden. So she really leaps ahead. And even though we learn later that Imogen was actually watching Garrick, she is for sure in love with Garrick. I am really glad that this was included because it goes with that whole showing someone else wants him kind of thing. And it shows the reader like, oh, wait, are they a thing? Is he already with her? And so it just leaves, again, this like back and forth pool. It just adds to that tension. And I do find it, I say interesting, but I think it's more than interesting that both of them recognize their feelings, Violet and Xaden, for each other to whatever extent they're willing to recognize it at this point. Back in Xaden's point of view, he recognized jealousy. And here we get it from Violet.
But Violet keeps insisting that she doesn't like him and is convinced that he went from wanting her dead to barely tolerating her. She's not the most self-aware girly.
She thinks she is, but no. And you know what? That's okay with me because if she was, then we wouldn't have 5 books worth of romantic development. So I guess she gets a pass here.
Okay, I'll give her a pass too. I will.
Speaking of jealousy, the audacity for Dane to look at Violet like she has betrayed him by checking out Xaden sparring shirtless after Xaden believed and defended her over her attack all while Dane actively did the opposite and hasn't spoken to her in weeks because of it.
He hasn't spoken to her because of his own actions, and even after Violet told him that they will never be together and why, he still thinks he has the right to be jealous of Violet, and she's just looking at Xaden. Ugh.
I don't think I've really registered it before, but it really stood out to me on this reread that she says, is that betrayal I see on his face. I hadn't connected it to the fact that he hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Because I kind of get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dane does not live up to Xaden. He doesn't compare. But he wants everything Xaden has as far as his leadership position. And right here in this moment, Violet's attention. And so I get it, but how dare you feel that to the extent of like betrayal instead of just jealousy?
Ugh.
Oh.
Dane's number one hater is right here. Speaking of Dane, I have a little side note, and it makes me laugh. So Hannah and I joined a couple of Fourth Wing Facebook groups, and I don't know if you saw this, Hannah, but somebody posted, "Tell me why I picture Kenny from We Are the Millers for Dane." Whenever I first saw this, I like literally almost spit my drink out because it made me laugh so hard.
Is that the movie with the kid that looks like Sid from, like, the evil kid on Toy Story? I think his name's Sid. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah. It's so good. It's so funny. I wish I remembered who posted it. I will try to find it to give them credit, but they posted a picture of this kid, and it made me cackle. I know Dane's supposed to be hot, too.
I think the way I think about it is that's him in Fourth Wing, and in Iron Flame, he, like, gets to be decent. I won't see him as hot, even if he is, like, physically hot, because of how much I just don't like his personality. It's hard for me to get past that, which is a lot of, like, my attraction to someone. But Fourth Wing, yeah, no, that works.
And to be fair, Kenny from We Are the Millers is hot now.
So there you go. Fourth Wing, Iron Flame. And then there's Jack. And here is where Violet puts together that Jack is allergic to oranges. And I totally missed this on my first read. Not that he was allergic, because I got that later, but I was so confused on how Violet knew and was able to then poison him with it. Like, she mentions, like, checking his lunch tray or something. That's where I was like, oh, she must have figured that out. But, like, that's kind of a jump. Like, just because he didn't want oranges that day. But
Right.
then this makes sense. This makes sense. But he's instigating an argument with Violet here about her not channeling and what that means about her having the most powerful dragon and da-da-da. And then Liam and Xaden, Garrick and Imogen all step up to defend her. And he points out that Vi is basically hiding behind them because she knows Jack could kill her. No shit. That would be the smart thing of her to do. Like, she doesn't have this big ego of, I'm going to be dumb for a second and buy into this. And that's the point, right? All of this seems like a power and ego trip for Jack. But then Violet takes him down a notch or two by calling him out for running during threshing and being a coward.
I loved it. Going back to the mention of oranges, I definitely noticed on my first reread that she realized that he was allergic to oranges whenever he was like, get it away from me. But I thought, what an odd mention of an allergy, because I didn't see where Rebecca Yarros was going with it, and I didn't really think much of it coming back to play in the future.
Well, and that's how we start to recognize the way that she throws in Easter eggs. You're like, wait,
Oh, yeah.
that's a strange thing to just casually mention. And then here you go.
But also, how satisfying when Violet yells, "You ran."
So satisfying. It is. Again, this power trip that he has, and she just cuts him down a notch which we'll come back to. I want to point out here that it reads, Jack flushes, his eyes nearly bugging out of his head. Notice here that Violet doesn't find anything odd about his eyes. Jack lunges at Violet before Liam and Garrick force him out of the gym. We'll come back to this.
We don't think that he's turned Venom yet, right?
I personally don't know. We know from when Xaden turns that the red eyes start immediately, or at least that's kind of like the clues that we've been given so far. But that's what we're going to come back to.
Good point.
After this, we have this continuation of the tension build. Guys, we're going to talk about this throughout the entire episode because that's what this chapter is. Like, there's so much going on, but it's all building up. Where Xaden is finally talking to her. What is with everyone not talking to her? That's so annoying.
So annoying.
This line, though, perfectly sums up what I mean by Violet misinterpreting Xaden. He says, I am annoyingly aware of everything you do. First of all, moment of silence for that line. Oh my God. It's those lines. They make me kind of flush a little. I'm like, oh. Anyways, she assumes that when he says this, it's a reference to Liam. But no, girl, he is into you. And just like you couldn't keep your eyes off of him when he walked by the mat, he feels the same way. And I get that in order to have this tension build of enemies to lovers, you have to have misunderstandings. Not even just enemies to lovers, literally just multiple books about romantic development, right? You have to have these misunderstandings that they can argue on. But some of these are frustratingly obvious.
And I know that books need it because if there's no conflict, there's no books. But it is so annoying that people are just like not talking to her because it's one of my biggest pet peeves in real life when someone is just avoiding you because they can't talk and work through their shit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's really frustrating. And you're not the only one that said that because Rebecca has said in an interview that she hates when her characters can't communicate. She says she just wants to stick them in a room and tell them to figure their shit out. Funny, Rebecca, coming from you. Because, but I get it. You know, she has to have a balance of that. I think what I'm realizing is I love romantasy, but I want the conflict more with the fantasy part. It's great for a tension build, but I really hope that these like miscommunications that we even see throughout Iron Flame that can be, at least to me, a little frustrating. I really hope that they like almost unite for the last couple books. Some misunderstandings is fine on like the conflict of the world and the revolution, maybe disagreeing about some things on how to navigate that, but not like this whole just completely taking something left field that was like more obvious. But we will get to that more as we go through Iron Flame. I also want to touch on Dane standing up for Violet against Xaden. But Xaden says, you choose the oddest times to defend her, Atos, and the most convenient times not to. Oh, snaps. He is not wrong.
No, he's not wrong at all. And why does he feel the need to stand up to Xaden, of all people, who has been proving to try to help her?
And quite frankly, that's one of the things that I think Dane would have also agreed with him on. Yes, Violet had to wash her armor, but at that time, it quite literally is about her not dying. And that's one of the things that Dane tries to claim he like is the most defensive over.
Right.
But then we got this line out of it, so it's fine. Like, it's fine. It's fine. Moving past Dane. So we finished this argument between them. Xaden turns around, shirtless, remember? And I thought we were just getting some great descriptors, but no. We had a point to him being shirtless. Violet sees the 107 scars on his back, which we now know are a Tirish custom, a symbol that he has taken responsibility for the March One's lives, which we've covered in depth previously. What did you make of this on your first read, Karen? The scars.
It's just kind of a gut-wrenching custom.
Oh, yeah.
But on my first read, without context, and with it kind of just really briefly being mentioned, I was wondering how it would come back into play, and I thought maybe he was tortured before coming to Basgiath, or something along those lines.
Yeah, have you ever watched Outlander?
No.
Oh my gosh, Karen. It is such a good series. It's got like a time travel element, but the romance in it is like top notch. There's no better romance I've ever seen on TV. It's incredible. But spoiler for someone who hasn't watched, you can skip ahead 30 seconds or so. The main love interest has scars on his back that he took slashings for doing like a good deed. And so that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, oh shit, like what? We're going to love him because of whatever this turns out to be. And quite frankly, I do love him.
The reason I thought that it was more like he had been tortured or something is because of another book series that I have read where something like that happened to the main character. I guess you're getting context from other places, even though it has nothing to do with this story. You kind of relate the two before you have all the answers.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we're kind of left guessing, and I know that he tenses up when she sees it. It's clearly something that really hits close to home and that I don't think he intentionally meant for her to see at that moment, especially considering we now know her mom is the one that did that, custom or not, which I think I've started to lean more to like, especially because he takes on a scar for Violet. That was not ill-intentioned, I don't believe, from the assembly.
Yeah.
So it seems like she was actually honoring a custom, but the context behind all of that and why he would even have to do that is the problem, right? Like the fact that he would have to take responsibility for all of them, that they weren't basically condemned for their parents' sins, quote unquote. So, whew.
So going from the heavy, can we get back to the fun?
Yeah. Then Andarna and Tarn tell Violet that she is ready to channel because she was able to hold her own and control her temper here. And just a couple of hours later, both Andarna and Tarn are nowhere to be found, which is quite convenient. We know what Tarn's doing, but Andarna is quite intentionally not responding to her. I don't know if you've thought of that.
I haven't.
I don't have a lot to say of that other than like that is just odd.
Run and play.
Right. She was like, I know what Taryn's doing. I'm not getting involved with this. And then Violet is hit by a train by both channeling for the first time and then Taryn's emotions, we should say, from his escapades with Sigale.
Okay, so I have a question. They mention that she's ready because she was able to hold her temper. Does this mean that they knew what her signet was going to be? Because she is going to be a lightning wielder, and being able to control your bigger feelings seems super important so that she isn't just like smiting random people.
Okay, that's fair. I see where you're coming from with that. I don't think they knew. I don't think the dragons know what the human signet will be at any point. It's based off of the humans' unique chemistry with their dragon, and unless Andarna does have some sort of foresight, predictive, special gift, then there's no other explanation that would tell us that they knew about it. But think of the kid who burst into flames when he manifested his signet, or Jeremiah when he couldn't control his emotions, when his signet manifested, and how it took over Violet, right? Like she was like laying literally on the floor. Imagine if you don't have the ability to regulate your own emotions, and hers is so connected to her emotions.
Oh, yeah.
She quite literally, with any signet, but especially her lightning, could have just combust from the energy. I was a little frustrated reading this, like, why is Taryn taking so long? Doesn't he trust that Violet can handle it? But it makes sense. She has had some emotional growth, and she did need to avoid combusting.
Good call.
Long way to say, no, I don't think they knew, but I think they were just prepping her because they knew that it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And that she was going to be extremely powerful no matter what, which is even harder than like the average. So that's my take. I do have to ask, though, do you think Taryn and Sigale intentionally forgot to shield their emotions from Xaden and Violet, like maybe to speed up the process between their sexually frustrated riders.
Oh my gosh. I've actually never had that thought cross my mind. It's a very interesting thought, and it's super funny because they are both super meddlesome. I can see it, and I can just imagine them being like, the kids are driving us nuts. Let's not shield and see what happens.
That's so fitting for them. Because if you think about how frustrating it has had to have been, again, Taryn knew that Xaden was already, like, at the very least attracted to Violet and knew the complexities before he bonded her.
Yeah.
So he's this grumpy old man who is now thrust into this early 20s drama, love affair, like literally enemies to lovers affair. And I'm sure he was like, y'all need to get your shit together. Both of them.
Right.
Taryn and Sagail are two peas in a pod, quite literally, with their personalities and their sass. I think they did it intentionally. Because why not wait until after they're done with their escapades? Clearly he chose when to channel.
Maybe he was celebrating channeling, and that's...
Bad timing, Taryn. He had to have known. Not only did he decide to channel then, but they conveniently forgot to shield. That tells me it was intentional because he's already actively making the decision. I'm going to start channeling to her. Unless he's just like super out of practice, but it was both of them. Oh, that's another thing. Both dragons conveniently forgot. Wait, I didn't think of that.
It would make more sense for Taryn.
Because, yeah, he's out of practice.
Yeah.
Right? But Sagail, no, I'm convinced it was intentional. And I don't blame them.
And not only that, they're both so meddlesome, and they keep making comments to their own riders, but they know what the other rider is thinking here, too, because of this weird connection.
I think that Sagail and Taryn probably love to gossip. Like, Matthew and I be telling each other everything, every little detail. They for sure would.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
I actually love to think about it like that. So then, our poor Liam, I am sure he was so confused. Just imagine Violet just swings open the door. He's casually just chilling outside. It's a slow night for his bodyguard duties. And then all of a sudden, she just like looks super hungry in this just very sexual way. She's over here thinking of like rubbing up on him like a cat or something like that. Like animalistic urges.
Liam's like, Violet, it's Tuesday.
Liam is so pure. And Violet realizes that. She's like, oh, he is so attractive. I can't believe I've not thought of him like this before. And then, oh, he's not Xaden. And I'm glad that she shut that down really quickly because that could have been way more awkward and way more messy.
Although, I'm sure if she was too overcome with Taryn's feelings and tried anything with Liam, he would have been so honorable and shut her down immediately. And for care of Xaden, too, because he knows, right?
He knows that Xaden was attached in some way, and I'm sure he actually saw more than Xaden was letting on, that he was also down bad and wouldn't have for that reason alone. But also the fact that he has just finished showing us that they are friends, that he is willing to compromise his relationship with Xaden, which is such a big deal. And we will come back to that in future episodes. Sticking on the spicy stuff. So Violet runs out to the courtyard and finds Xaden smoking churum, which I want to say I've listened to a Rebecca Yarros interview where she like basically confirms that this is weed, but it is implied to be some sort of illicit drug that is, you know, like illegal in Navarre. It's like, and maybe not quite illegal so much as like, we're just not supposed to have that. Yeah. To calm the waves of emotion, or whatever you want to call this, that he is also feeling from Sagail. And he indicates that this is a common thing he does to try and like calm this down, but that it gets easier when you learn to shield.
I'm glad you mentioned that it's pretty much weed, because I was wondering if it was, but I wasn't sure. I was like, is he smoking like a cigarette? Because I've heard that people do that when they're anxious or something, so maybe that could calm them down. But Taryn and Sigale are mates, so it makes sense that it's a common occurrence. But you would think that they would be better at shielding to not torture Xaden and now Violet.
That's why I'm convinced that they did it on purpose. There's no way. Okay. See, that's why I think it was strategic on their part. So, of course, Xaden is under the impression, or at least acting like he thinks that Violet's desire for him here is all from Taryn. But this description of Violet's thoughts really shows us that's absolutely not the case, if we still had any questions or any doubts about it. Quote, Xaden, while brooding and bossy, dangerous and lethal, is a toe-curling sight that makes my pulse quicken. But Xaden laughing, his head thrown back with a smile curving his mouth, is drop-dead beautiful. My stupid, foolish heart feels like there's a fist around it, squeezing tight.
Oh.
She is not just after this man sexually. No. She's so far past that. Oh, Rebecca can write a description, boy. Oh my God.
That's not a description you write about someone that you're lusting after. That is a head over heels in love description.
And I think those are my favorite descriptions of him. Like, he's hot and he does hot things, but it's when she talks about his like breathtaking smile.
Yeah.
That she sees for like a split second before he hardens again. Those kind of lines, I eat them up.
Oh, same.
Then Xaden gets jealous at Vi's mention of Liam before he realizes that Liam isn't with her. Someone was distracted. She says he's in bed, and Xaden comes back quick with, your bed? Now, remember, in chapter 16, Xaden's point of view, when he first thinks about making Liam her bodyguard, Garrick says, everyone likes Liam, so hopefully she will too. It'll make it easier for him to guard her. Xaden says she'll like him. Before an unpleasant feeling flares in his gut again, twisting into a knot. So he was already jealous of the thought of her liking Liam before Garrick grins and says, don't worry, he won't fuck her. For a split second here, Xaden thinks he actually might have, to the point that Violet finally recognizes that Xaden is jealous.
Oh, it's so
Love
good.
it.
So good. And I actually missed the mention of the unpleasant feeling. So great catch with that. Mm-hmm. That makes his jealousy reaction of Liam make even more sense because it adds more context to it. Because at first I wondered if there had been a situation of someone picking Liam over Xaden, and that's why he made the everyone likes Liam comment. But after thinking about it, I feel like Liam is just good. And obviously Xaden sees this, and as our morally gray character, he just understands that he's not actually seen as good like Liam is, and he has to try to be moral. And I think that he thinks that this would make sense for Violet to pick someone like Liam.
Oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. I think he meant it genuinely. Like, everyone loves Liam. He knows Violet's morals, and a lot of them do align with Liam's characters. I hadn't ever considered that maybe he had thoughts about that so much as he just knows Liam's so good.
Yeah, and he thinks very highly of him. He's just good.
Oh. Well, that makes me kind of sad, too, because it makes sense that he'd have, like, a negative perception of himself. But to me, Xaden doesn't have a lot of flaws. I stand by that.
We think that, but
that's going to be something he really struggles with in Onyx Storm. Even though his intention and why he made this immoral decision, quote unquote immoral, is actually quite moral.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm not going to have fun reading that part. I'm not going to. Anyways, back to the tension. The spice. We get more of this tension build. I said it just throughout the whole thing, where they finally communicate and clear some things up. But Violet even admits to herself that part of this whole thing was her poking at him to distract herself from the feelings of lust, which are so not working. I think it's actually making it worse. Again, tension. Before Xaden says she needs to learn to shield out Taryn. Then we got one of my favorite moments of the whole book. Violet. Xaden, would you pretty please teach me how to shield before I accidentally climb you like a tree and we both wake up with regrets?
Oh my gosh.
Took me out. Oh my God. Because you know what? She finally said it. And I know it's all under the pretense of Taryn. Maybe that was half of it. Maybe it was like 3% of it. This was mostly her.
You know, if it was just Taryn, she would have gone with Liam.
I was about to say, or was able to turn away from him like she did with Liam.
Right.
It's totally not. And he should have known. That's a good point. He should have known right then when she said she almost basically jumped Liam's bones that she was in control enough to not. He knew. He knew to some extent. And I'm sorry. This whole scene deserves its own moment. So I'm going to read it to you. Xaden says, and since you asked so nicely, he adjusts his stance and brings both of his hands up to my cheeks, cradling my face before sliding them back to hold my head. Close your eyes. Violet, it requires touching me. My eyes flutter shut at the... I can't even say this with a straight face without flushing. It requires touching me. My eyes flutter shut at the sensation of his skin against mine. Not at all. Just one of the perks of not thinking too clearly. You have incredibly touchable skin. Oh. I fucking love this chapter.
It's so good. My face is red. Your face is a little red. We're both like warm right now.
It's so good. It's like I had only really I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I had only really read young adult fantasy. Really, most of my interest was young adult. So we get some of these moments, but I'd never had an author really lean into so much of the romance for my fantasy stuff before. He's literally about to teach her how to use her magic while cradling her face and saying she has touchable skin. Like it's the perfect combination.
I just like can't even handle it. Like I'm very hot right now because of us reading this. Oh, it's so good and I love it so much.
Do we need a moment? We need a moment?
Yeah, I think I might. Oh, goodness.
That's
it's
not even
so
like
good.
the best part. Oh, okay. Okay. But that's that tension.
Yes. And like, I almost am more like flushed and excited and giddy about that kind of thing before it leads up. In the show How I Met Your Mother, the main character is meeting one of the many girlfriends he meets, and she talks about the best part about like meeting somebody new and dating them and before you actually kiss them is the part leading up to the first kiss where you're just so excited, and she calls it the drum roll. And that feels like the drum roll that she's talking about.
It's the anticipation. It's the knowing that there's going to be like a peak of whatever their relationship is, which in this chapter is the kiss. But yeah, it's the lead up. It's the build up. The anticipation is so incredibly satisfying to read. It really is.
Yeah.
All right. We got more to get to. So then he walks Violet through how to shield. And Violet chooses the archives as her place in her safe space, visual in her mind. And Violet's a natural at this, which is huge because Xaden said it took him weeks to learn. And this is because Violet has already been practicing shielding. Remember in episode 3, when we went through the first set of chapters on the parapet in chapter 2, she thinks, quote, "There's no room for fear, so I block it out, envisioning shoving the emotion behind locked iron bars in my mind." So while Vi says no one had taught her how to shield, they just hadn't articulated how to envision it because she was already practicing long before this moment. And once she had that, everything clicked.
She's so smart. She's so great. And we've talked about how scribes really have to stay neutral in their emotions because they can't really show those emotions. We also talked about how we can't really see Violet, who wears her heart on her sleeve, being like that. But I do think that her training as a scribe and like learning how to cut off her emotions and feelings made her grasp shielding extremely quickly.
That's a good point. It's almost like practicing compartmentalizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that does make sense. And that's one of Violet's greatest strengths. And so it was really great and probably great for her mentally after going through all these different challenges in the Writer's Quadrant to finally come across something that is mind-centered that she does excel at.
Well, after Xaden teaches Violet how to shield, he says something similar to her. He says, "You are astonishing. I couldn't do that for weeks. This entire time, she's been told that she's weak and she needs to run away to the Scribe Quadrant. But Xaden says this, and she gets emotional and thinks, I'm finally not only good at something, but astonishing.
Exactly.
Oh,
He sees her.
he sees her. And that's what we all want in a person. And he's doing that. Oh, and then he says, I know, it's like so good. And then he says that touching her was a bad idea. And she agrees. And then he says kissing her would be a cataclysmic mistake. And they just go back and forth. And then he's like, fuck it. And then they kiss.
I can't.
Oh my gosh.
The whole back and forth of this, like,
can't take it anymore.
The playful banter, the flirtiness, the anticipation is even better on a reread, knowing that Xaden loved her since their first kiss. He says in Iron Flame, I have been since the night the snow fell in your hair and you kissed me for the first time.
Oh.
And I think that this was in hindsight. Like, he was still in denial for a while after this. If it's not chapter 22 that we get from Xaden's POV, I strongly recommend reading, I've said it before, Belle_BB's fanfiction, Xaden POV of this chapter specifically, because it's so, so good. And you get his perspective minus the knowledge of intentions and stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. My favorite part of this kiss, though, because it goes on for a minute, like at least like a page and a half or something like that. Violet thinks closer. I need him closer, as though he can hear my thoughts. He kisses me harder, as though he can hear my thoughts. Importantly, closer the first time is in italics, which is how the thoughts they send to each other mentally are written out. I don't know if this means that every time that things are in italics, that means that she sent it to him. I don't think so. But this time, he is for sure reading that. She sent that to him. Not intentionally, but that was a moment he used his signet. I'm convinced.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep looking out for the italicized and see how he's responding as we continue reading, and we will let you guys know. And especially since we are coming up on more moments like this where it's just the two of them together.
Oh, yes. And honestly, like this instance of it was so loud, but Rebecca knew we were distracted. Like that actually could just be like a good descriptor, right? Like they were just so in sync. But now we know a little bit better.
Now we know.
And this is where the whole Xaden can't use his intrinsic ability while shielding becomes an issue, because he tells Violet that the way to block out the feelings from their dragons is to shield, gets really shocked that she's not shielding, and then that's why he teaches her. So you'd think he was doing that right here, which would mean that he can't be reading her intentions/thoughts. So I think that there are some inconsistencies with him not being able to use his signet when he's shielding. And honestly, I think that just opens up for Rebecca to get away from that. Just call it a reason to have covered it up for no spoilers for the bonus chapters, but move to where he's able to. Otherwise, it's limiting, which we've touched on quite a bit already.
I don't understand how he wouldn't be able to use his signet, even if he was shielding. Nobody else really has that issue. He doesn't have that issue with his shadows. But I agree. I do think it's just Rebecca's reasoning so she could give us his point of view without spoiling Iron Flame.
Yeah. I do have to point out that this scene is one of Rebecca's 2 favorite Fourth Wing scenes. According to Skyfall Scotland on Tumblr, Rebecca Yarros stated on a panel in Sydney that her favorite scenes in Fourth Wing were the dagger stealing scene in Chapter 9 and this first kiss scene.
And who could blame her that this is her favorite scene, because it's ours too.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if it's my favorite scene throughout the whole book, but it's a top for me.
So far.
We'll come back at the end and think about it. And now we know that this is actually the moment where Violet manifests her signet, contrary to what she thinks is later on with the Mountain and Jack. She thinks to herself, I surrender completely, melting into him, my body going pliant against his and losing that mental foothold he calls grounding. A flash of light burns my closed eyes, followed by the boom of thunder. Thunder snow isn't common around here, but damn does it summarize how this feels. Wild and out of control.
Oh my gosh. I just love it.
I love how this is written, because it seems like the significance of it was just to snap Xaden out of it. But we know now that he realized it might have been her signet. He recognized it and suspected it. And the way that it's written, it doesn't ever say the word lightning, but it's implied, because that might have been a little too obvious. So she really just skirted by in this whole description, knowing, again, we were distracted. In chapter 29, he says, lightning, your signet is lightning, isn't it? I thought so, but I wasn't sure until I saw you take that tower down. This is the moment he's referring to.
I love it.
So this means that Violet manifested her signet the day, maybe less than an hour after she first started channeling, which we know can take writers up to 6 months. All while they're afraid of combusting the entire time. Is just another display of how powerful Violet already is and will be.
It's such a good catch that she was manifesting her signet that same day. She is going to be so much more powerful than we even see in Iron Flame. And this little moment of light flashing and thunder booming is also a theme we continue to see anytime Xaden and Violet are having a little hot and heavy moment.
I noticed that as well, and it's because her signet manifested at their first moment like this and is charged by those intense moments of her letting go. And Xaden says they haven't found the key yet, but that is it, which we get hints at coming up.
Oh, that's such a good point, too. Because when we mentioned very emotional, they were waiting until she could control her temper. And it's just very highly charged emotional moments that lightning.
Yeah. Her signet is very much so attached to her emotions. Xaden stopping them continuing was actually the right move. they needed to know when they finally did have like a fully intimate moment that it was not clouded by their dragon's emotions or any other outside influences. Violet even goes on to second guess if Xaden was influenced by the Churum in chapter 24. So I'm really glad, whatever his reasons at the very moment, that he did actually wait. And it allowed the tension build to continue for us, the anticipation, not just like we get it all at once, it really spaces it out for us. So I'm glad it ended like this.
Agree. As much as we want it now, but the tension's so good. We want the build. It just makes it more satisfying in the end. And it was super honorable on Xaden's part, even though Violet mentioned that he is right, but now she couldn't actually feel Taryn anymore, and she still wanted him just as much.
Yeah, and I think it's implied that she couldn't, like, in the middle and end of their kiss. So, yeah, she knows that it was her, but now she's afraid, like, well, was he influenced? So I think he was trying to protect himself here. As he said, he looks back and he knows he fell in love with her at this moment. But I think he got scared and was in denial about it.
Oh, yeah.
So we flash forward to the next day where Violet is sharing all the details with Rhiannon. And then Rhiannon shares with Violet that she manifested her signet last night. As well, by the way. They did in the same night. That's crazy. And it's summoning, meaning she can summon items through a wall, which is really, really cool. And I've always thought that if I could choose a power, it would be like a gravity manipulation, like where I could move things with my mind, including myself, so that I could fly. But Violet says that moving objects is actually a lesser magic, and that Rhee's signet is different because she can basically teleport an item to her, which I thought was an important distinction.
Yeah, her signet is so cool. And I think it's one that I would want only because what you just mentioned, this is lesser magic, but I always forget things because of ADHD. And I end up having to get up and go get whatever, like whenever I'm trying to get comfortable, like 37 times. So I think it would be very handy to just be able to be like, come to me.
Yeah.
But one thing I kind of glossed over with Rhee's signet on my first read is how rare it actually is. And how Violet says that she hasn't read about someone having this signet in a century.
Yeah, I think that I didn't really think much of it because I felt like we were kind of being told that everything for all of our main characters was rare. So it was like, just another rare thing. But it does make sense because Rhee is set up to be the high-ranking leader, as Violet has no leadership aspirations. So she's kind of like the character for that, which I'm really glad it's not Dane. And it's really cool to get to watch her do that when our main character is not that. She's like the way we get to live through that, if that makes sense. So it would make sense she would need to be super powerful. As Violet says, having that rare of a signet is going to get you promoted way faster.
I think I missed this also on my first read because in Iron Flame, we know that Rhiannon is squad leader, and it makes sense because she has a rare signet. She is a really good leader, and I love seeing her in that role.
Me too. And we know that this signet comes in handy big time in Iron Flame with the dagger that she summons so Vi isn't caught by Varish. But I definitely see it evolving to like longer distances. I think she'll be able to summon objects from like a different city or something eventually. I see her getting really powerful.
Oh, that would be so crazy. And eventually, when she can go through walls, she can get herself into different locations. I think we could end up seeing some kind of mission where she ends up doing that because when Rhee says, I can't go through walls, and Violet says, yet. You can't go through walls yet. And it seems like Rebecca is setting this up for the future.
I didn't catch that. Good call. Like, that seems like a different signet to me. That would be what Rebecca has called distance wielding. if she is summoning something to her, she is the center and end destination to whatever she is teleporting. She can't bring herself to herself. But this is the kind of thing where we're hearing it from the perspective of our characters. She thinks it's summoning because that's what she's able to do right now. Xaden thinks it's intentions because that's what he's able to do right now. What you found there implies that she doesn't summon, she teleports. But she doesn't just teleport herself, she can teleport items. And like Violet's only started out manifesting through lightning, but she's pure energy, Rhee started out summoning items to her that are smaller. She's going to be able to teleport.
Only reason I thought this way was because you mentioned to me if there's, what did you say? If there's like a gun in the kitchen, the gun has to go off or something. The shotgun? Yes. Karen! And so whenever they said you can't do it yet, I was like, this has to come back into play.
This is a shotgun. You found the shotgun.
You did.
That's crazy.
Rhiannon with a shotgun in the kitchen. Sorry.
Not crazy that you found that. Impressive. And that's why, honestly, like sometimes I do some of these rereadings just listening to the audio, but I found that I have to listen to the audio and read through every single line because even the things like that I'm hoping that's one of the first things that I've missed, but good catch. I'm so glad you found that because that's huge. She's going to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. I think that this is going to be a very powerful little group of people that we are following throughout this.
Okay, that just kind of blew my mind. Which actually goes straight into what we were about to talk about, which is how we found out about a bunch of signets in this set of chapters. Mira, we find out that she can manifest a ward around herself and her squad, which is important as that disarms the magic from any griffin or, as we later find out, venin. She can also extend or reinforce an existing ward. So that's really, really beneficial to like her being at an outpost, which we will get to in Montserrat. Riddick can wield ice.
Can you just imagine Riddick? Because Riddick's a jokey little shit. I love him. I mean that in an endearing way. But can you just see him being like, ice, and then making somebody trip and fall just because for his own entertainment?
I cannot imagine the things he does with his signet. Like,
oh, so good.
And I'll just leave it at that. Liam has farsight, being able to see a single tree a mile away. I feel like this was such a throwaway opportunity to give him something way more badass, but like, I guess if he had something more defensive, it would have made him too powerful and too perfect and less easy to kill.
I feel like I need a list of all of these, every signet we've learned about, every signet we're gonna learn about, just because I want to see who has what, how many people have a signet. I can't keep them straight in my head, trying to remember whose is whose.
Well, we should probably make our own because we've connected a lot of things. We've gone pretty deep into this, but the Empyrean wiki, however you say it, we'll link it in the show notes, has a compiled list. I think it's like a team of people that put the information in there. I have found some things that aren't in there on other things before, so just prefacing that there might be some information missing, but overarchingly, I love that website. So I do recommend checking that out, both listeners and Karen, since you mentioned it.
I'm going to print it and put it right here.
Oh, good luck. They go so deep into like species. Every single character has a profile, like a canon timeline of all the events. It's pretty fascinating. So,
okay, well, I'm going to make a smaller one and put it right here.
Your wall could be plastered. We could just be connecting the dots.
I should do that.
So Rhiannon and Violet are on the way to Professor Carr's class when Dane pulls Violet to the side and finally wants to talk to her after weeks. Karen, this is so messed up to me because not only did he essentially call her a liar in front of everyone and ordered her to let him steal her memories, which is such a violation. He won't speak to her. He does say it's on him for not believing her over Amber, and I'm glad he apologized for not asking her permission. But the fact that he didn't even realize he didn't ask is such a huge red flag. He wasn't even aware of his entitlement to her body. Not a good or true friend, much less person.
It goes back to us being told that they were best friends, but we're just never really shown. And this is why it is so difficult for me to like Dane. And I have been really hard on him, but this stuff keeps happening.
Yeah.
Ugh. And Violet says to him, "But keeping me safe is keeping me from growing too." He blinks at me, and something shifts between us, like maybe, just maybe, he is finally ready to hear me. Is he?
He listens more than he usually does. But I think the issue is, like, he refuses to see her as a new person. He's still hung up on who she was before the Quadrant, but it has changed him and her. Violet says it best. The writer's Quadrant stripped away the fear and even the anger about being thrown into this Quadrant, and it revealed who I am. It revealed who I really am. At my core, Dane, I'm a writer. Taryn knew it, and Darna knew it. It's why they chose me. And until you can stop looking for ways to keep me in a glass cage, we aren't going to get past this, no matter how many years of friendship we have between us.
Naps.
Ooh, I got chills.
Naps for Violet. Communication queen. It's so annoying because she keeps having to have a different version of the same exact conversation with him to make him hear her.
Yeah.
Hate it.
It's honestly, like, it's great to see her stand up for herself, but it is frustrating to have to hear it multiple times. Yeah, I agree. Because I felt like I think we've talked about it before. We've had these quotes where we're like, oh yeah, like, go Violet. But it's like, all right, after her having to do this, how many times?
We've all had that experience with somebody in our lives where nothing's getting solved because you keep having the same conversation. And so I think reading about it is a little triggering. And I'm just like, just understand.
I'm not going to. He's so frustrating to talk about. I think that's why.
Yeah.
But they're also early 20s. So it's like they're going to have communication issues. But god dang, it's so frustrating to read. And he compares himself to Xaden here, asking if Xaden gets a free pass for his control issues. And finally, all it took was one kiss, and all of a sudden, Violet is enlightened. She's explaining her need for a bodyguard that she fought back on for weeks to Dane, defending Xaden's decision to assign her one, and says, quote, "And if I die, Xaden dies. What's your excuse?"
Not only if she dies, Xaden dies, he isn't just protecting her, shielding her, he is also teaching her and training her.
Which we never see Dane make efforts for.
Dane would never.
Also, Dane doesn't really have the skills, which we'll come back to. He's not like, we aren't shown him being a leader like ever. We're told he's a great leader. We're told he's her best friend. I think there was like some room for some more development on his character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a prequel.
I don't want one on Dane. Keep it. I don't want it. I don't. Like, maybe after a redemption arc, a little more information on him, but I don't. And then Dane says Xaden has, quote, secrets, reasons to never forgive your mother. All right. We find out in Iron Flame that he was referring to General Sorrengail putting the 107 scars on Xaden's back. And you know what? Fair. Why didn't he give her this information to begin with? And not just throw it back in her face right now?
I hate it so much. But I also find it interesting that Dane holds onto a bias against Xaden when he knows that this happened and he knows that Violet's mom is the one who killed Xaden's father and put the scars on Xaden's back. He has such a bias against him, thinking he is evil, whenever he's like, Xaden's the one that has reason to hate you. He's just like, incapable of sympathy or compassion or something?
It's partly that, but I think also he's brainwashed.
Oh, yeah.
Hardcore by Navarre. He's drinking the lemonade, right? Or the Kool-Aid or whatever the phrase is. He has somehow done what they've done, justifying their decision to condemn the kids. And then it just bleeds into that. So yeah, you're right. Like he holds a strong bias against Xaden. And I don't think we really see that change until Iron Flame. Luckily we do. So
I'm in love with him after that. Just kidding.
Oh, yes, that's one of my favorite thing Dane's ever said. We'll get to that when we get to Iron Flame. Huge time jump, though, in our chapters here. We jump to Violet finding out she's going to face Jack on the challenge mat and asks Liam not to tell him. And this is where we're shown that Liam isn't just a bodyguard, but her friend. As she asks him, "Are we friends, or am I just an assignment?" And Liam chooses being her friend over telling Xaden about Jack.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm still wondering where she is going to find out who she's challenging, because they never actually tell us that she just goes somewhere.
I feel like it might be referenced in Iron Flame. It's a bulletin somewhere. I might be misremembering that, though. We'll keep an eye out for it.
Anyways, I love this moment between Liam and Violet because I already adore Liam, and it's obvious that Violet does too, and now she knows she can trust him as a friend.
Yeah. And Violet explains to him why they can't tell Xaden. He can't do anything. If he knew and killed Jack after he just defended Violet over Amber, there would be an uproar. Technically, Jack challenging her is part of their training, though clearly they aren't supposed to kill each other on the mat. He still hasn't done anything, though, that is against the rules here until the moment on the mat when he uses powers and tries to kill her. And by that point, Xaden's there because she told Liam that he could go then. Before then, that's why Immaterio allows him to challenge her, knowing that Jack is very likely going to try and kill her. He hadn't done anything wrong at that point, quote unquote, by the Codex.
Yeah. I got emotional reading Violet's conversation with Liam before she sends him to go get Xaden, because it almost sounded like she was saying goodbye to him. She says, "You've been a great shadow." And then his eyes widen and he sprints away. And I was like, does he think that this is her saying goodbye to him? Ugh.
This got me because I 100% think she was saying goodbye in case she didn't survive. Ugh. I think that was her also saying thank you for not telling him, even though she knows how Liam feels about owing his life to Xaden. She knew how monumental that decision was on his part to uphold being her friend. Ooh. These characters, especially
we
Liam.
love them.
Yeah, we're spending so much time in this deep dive with them, but even on a first read, they're written so well that you really do start to care for them. And I've mentioned before, I'm an extremely empathetic reader, so I feel them. And that's one of the that's one of the moments that gets me, knowing what's coming, especially.
Oh. Especially then.
And finally, the day has come that Jack gets to challenge her. And while on the mat, he forces power into her, and she's just barely able to slam a vial of orange juice or something oranges into his mouth, breaking a tooth, which debilitates him as he is allergic to orange juice, which is so creative on Violet's part. Otherwise, she would have died.
Oh, 100%.
And I have been so excited to get to this chapter because Rebecca dropped a nugget of gold in an Entertainment Weekly interview. Now, we've referenced it before, but we're going to walk through it, confirming that Jack was already Venom on the sparring mat where he forced power from the earth into Violet. Quote, "In book 1, when he forces power into her, it was the first hint that 1, there's a weakness in the wards. They're not spotting that they think that they're infallible and they think they're beyond harm. And so when I laid that in when they're on the sparring mat and he forces all that power through, it's not a signet. It's not a natural ability."
Oof. I caught it immediately this time during this reread, and Violet thinks, quote, his sadistic grin and red rim around his eyes are all I can see as he forces more and more power into my body. Such a dead giveaway that he was already been in by the time they were sparring here.
She also says, Rebecca, you have to remember that Jack was not happy with his selection. He wanted Taryn, and he felt like your power, it corresponds to which dragon you have. So he wanted the biggest, most powerful dragon, and he didn't get it. So Jack probably wouldn't have been satisfied with any level of power except for Taryn or Coda. And then when asked if she knew the moment Jack turned, she said, in my head, yes. I have two theories. Here's my first one. I think he turned after the last Matt incident. Rebecca Yarros has built up throughout this book that for Jack, it's not just about being power hungry, it's about being power hungry for his ego. Think about what started all of this when Violet first escaped him trying to overpower her on the parapet and she held a knife to his balls. That was a huge hit to his ego because he couldn't do anything to her. Then he wants the most powerful dragon, and it's not just that he bonds a smaller, less powerful dragon. It's that Violet got the biggest, most powerful. Then she fends off the three of them, and he runs away from her. Think about how he must feel knowing someone witnessed him do that, much less Violet. Then she embarrasses him, calling him out for running in front of everyone. And he can't do anything, again, because the boys are protecting her. He lunges at her out of uncontrolled anger and is carried out by Liam. Weeks go by before he gets the chance to challenge her, and by then he's Venom. That's theory one.
Yeah. Having it listed out like that, I don't know why my mind could only think of Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. How Alexander Hamilton kept getting the opportunities that Aaron Burr wanted, got one of the and I'm coming at this from only the musical knowledge, so I don't know what happened in real life, but he gets one of the Schuyler sisters. And I mean, ultimately, Aaron Burr's ego hit, and then he wants to kill him. So
I didn't know you were also a Hamilton girly. I think you missed my biggest phase of Hamilton, but pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir? I love I have like every word memorized.
Musical theater girly.
That makes a lot of sense. Burr definitely was not a great person, especially in real life. Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
But he's not as bad as Jack here, but I see what you mean.
No.
Like, Hamilton was constantly getting what he wanted, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's an ego thing, right? So
yeah,
I just wanted to add that in, even if it's not what necessarily made him turn Venom, in that it still is a thread that's in every interaction they have together. It's not just about him being power hungry. His eyes were not red on the map. So Rebecca says she knows the moment in her head where he turned. That could imply somewhere off page in between the last Matt incident to this one. Or he turned on the mat right here.
Ooh, is that your second theory?
That's my second theory because, and this is also limited knowledge about Venom and when eyes are turned red. So we know that after Xaden turns, he first turns, and within I don't know how long it would have been, but like less than an hour, whatever, same day, his eyes were red. So we're thinking, at least by this logic, that he wasn't when she mentioned his eyes before. She didn't say it was red-rimmed at the last sparring instant. She doesn't say, he's whispering in her ear on the mat. They're sparring. And she doesn't notice his eyes until after he forced the power into her. So I wonder, either one of two things is going on. He turned on the mat right then, and that's when he got the red rims around his eyes. Or he was Venom, and your eyes don't stay red until you channel more energy again. I don't know. It's one of those two things. We've narrowed it down. It's definitely here or between this and the last sparring mat, I think.
Yeah, and we'll be able to know a little bit more once we learn more about Venom, because It's so weird that you can just decide.
One of the things she wanted to make a point at and hit at is that their wards are weakened right now. Otherwise, when they're strong, they don't have weaknesses, you can't turn venom under the wards. So at this point, it hasn't been a common thing. But yeah, you're right. When you're not under the wards, yeah, they can like basically at any point just opt to trade their soul or a piece of it to become venom at any time. If they know about it. I don't know if like someone who is not told about this information will be able to just one day be like, I want power and know to pull it from the earth, you know?
Right.
Whoa, did so much happen though in this set of chapters.
In just 2 chapters.
Just 2. Time to stop by the Scribe Quadrant for our Epigraph analysis of chapter 22.
Okay, so the epigraph says, the first rush of power is unmistakable. The first time it forms to you, surrounds you with a seemingly endless supply of energy, you'll be addicted to the high, to the possibilities of all you can do with it, to the control you hold in the palm of your hand. But here's the thing, that power can quickly turn and control you. Page 64, the Book of Brennan. So, this is a warning that the taste of power can actually consume you if you aren't cautious and careful. Do you feel like this is a warning about getting power hungry like Jack? Because that was my first thought of being controlled because you always need more.
I see it with Jack, but not just even him specifically, but any writer becoming venom. We've had references before about people being jealous of the power that riders have and turning when they can't access power through a dragon or griffin, so they take it themselves from the earth and turn venom. But what happens when you get a taste of that power from your dragon, but it's a small dragon with less power than you hoped for or want, and you have the option to take almost a limitless amount from the earth that you don't have to rely on a dragon for? That need for power consumes and controls you to the point you exchange your soul for it. And that's why becoming venom is so bad, right? And why it's such a big deal that Xaden turned for love and not power. Maybe that means he has a shot at managing that increasing need for more power, whereas someone who turned for more power would not be able to deny themselves access to more and hence losing more of their soul the more that they use it.
I hope that's like a saving grace for Xaden.
So basically, yeah, I think it was definitely a warning. It was definitely a heads up to us that like, hey, you've been told that people who are jealous of not having any power will turn. But there's also people who are jealous of not having enough. And who do we know? Jack. So yeah, absolutely.
Now let's head on over to the Healer's Quadrant to get a temperature check on our characters, our favorite moments, and quotes. So, Hannah, who was hot and not for you this week?
I think I've made it abundantly clear that Xaden, like he literally had us turning red in the face earlier. And I think that's all that needs to be said. And then, of course, Liam, because the golden character and the golden friend.
I love it.
You?
Same. That was who I chose.
I think actually we have the same knot as well. Dane and Jack.
Yeah.
No explanation needed. I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly. Favorite moments, though.
Tell me yours.
I always like mention them throughout because when Violet asks Xaden to teach her how to shield, and then their first kiss, of course, that whole little section of anticipation. Yeah, 100%.
Mine was when Liam gives Violet a figurine of Taryn. Oh, I melted.
Yours is so wholesome.
I am a wholesome girl.
I agree, though. It's really sweet, especially foreshadowing the figurine of Endorna. Oh, any sweet moment is so, like,
Bittersweet.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. Favorite quotes, though.
Tell me yours first.
All right. When Rhee and Vi are sparring, Liam, stop objectifying our wing leader. Rhiannon says, is that what we're doing? I love it. And then it goes with my favorite moment. Xaden, would you pretty please teach me how to shield before I accidentally climb you like a tree and we both wake up with regrets?
Oh, it's so good.
10 out of 10. Yours?
Oh, and mine was kind of along the same vein. It's just whenever Xaden says, I'm annoyingly aware of everything you do.
Yep. All it takes is one of these lines and I'm like, done. It's over for me. Yes, swooning.
It's so good.
Time to join our riot as we take flight into our foreshadowing, overarching questions, and theories section. This includes moments that stood out during this reread, and some of them may spiral into theories. Starting with Garrick's Rebellion relic. It is described as the second largest relic Violet has seen. And now that we know how the Marked Ones got their relic, why are they different sizes? And what does it mean that Garrick's is the second largest? You look so confused. Yeah, same.
Girl.
I did not realize that they were different sizes.
I had no idea. And I mean, I assumed that they would all be the exact same size, like you just said, but no?
It seems like Xaden's is the largest because Violet thinks only Xaden's reaches his curved jawline. And so there's clearly varying sizes, and his would be the second highest, or Garrick's would be the second largest. But at first I read this as their regular relic, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that Garrick's dragon was that big. And then I was like, wait, that's Rebellion relic.
Maybe Xaden's is the biggest because he is the oldest and he's like the one in charge for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And Garrick's is the second largest because he's like Xaden's second in command.
Yeah. With what we know about how they earned them, it was based on runes that were tailored to their bloodline. So maybe Garrick's bloodline was the second most powerful. I don't know.
Ooh.
But
I kind of like that, though. Now that we know Xaden is Venin, would it maybe foreshadowing that Garrick is the one that will be stepping in to Xaden's role of taking responsibility for the other Marked Ones?
I don't want to think about that. I don't know what to make of what it will look like going forward for Xaden, because that implies that Bezgaeth continues as normal, because that's why he would need to take responsibility for them, right? Is if they stay in the Riders Quadrant. But what if they move over to Orisha at the makeshift school they've got there? I don't know.
And take all of the Marked Ones with them?
Unless Violet and Xaden are together and they're like traveling to find a cure or whatever, I really hope that he doesn't get separated from the core group. Like I think because his reasoning was turning for love, that he will be able to some extent manage being a Venin under wards. But that would mean he has to stay under the wards of Bezgaeth.
Ah.
And maybe, but then it's hard because the idea is because Venin then can't attack under the wards, but if you know Xaden's not going to attack, then that wouldn't be an issue. But then they know so little about Venin, maybe leadership gets really freaked out.
Well, yeah, makes sense.
Huh. For the next book. Or 2.
Or 5. Just kidding.
He better not stay Venin the entire time. No, I'm counting on him getting cured. For my mental health, Rebecca.
For my mental health.
The next moment. At the end of the sparring scene in chapter 22, page 270, after Xaden tells Violet that he is annoyingly aware of everything she does, she thinks, every inch of my body vibrates with anger, with irritation, with whatever this electric tension is between us as we stand there, our eyes locked in combat. First of all, that description, love it. But we now know that Violet is not only a lightning wielder, she can wield lightning because... And that was thunder in the background.
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Okay. We now know that Violet is not only a lightning wielder, she can wield lightning because her signet is pure power, electricity. I didn't catch this because we don't know until Iron Flame.
Yeah.
It's pure power, not just lightning.
Even at this point, we don't know her signet yet. So,
Right. Oh, are you talking about our second one?
Up to the point that we've read, we don't know her signet at all yet.
Oh, yeah. So it was just another one of those foreshadowing moments. So, Rebecca blows my mind with this, to be entirely honest. On to the next one. When Violet first starts to channel, she describes it as energy pouring in, a deluge of raw, endless power. Same thing. And I imagine that this is what everyone feels, because when you first channel, it's not usual that you immediately manifest a signet, but Violet's signet is pure power. Felix says in Iron Flame, you wield pure power that takes the form of lightning because that's what you're most comfortable shaping it as. So I don't really know what to make of this specific reference to her feeling this raw, endless power when she first starts channeling, so much as I do think it fuels the dragon connection via eggshell theory, and it seems significant that her power is actually exactly what dragons channel into all riders. It just manifests differently for all of them. Like, she skips a step.
Yeah. Do you think that it's lightning because she's comfortable with that because of her mother's signet?
Yeah, it makes sense. But she never consciously thought of it, so it is all subconscious.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Pure power. I wonder how that's going to look moving forward. Like,
I've thought about that because we don't have electricity. But Rebecca's setting up for something. It's gonna be awesome, and I'm so excited for it. We also get another reference to her signet when she's talking to Liam in the hallway on page 272. She thinks the driving, thundering desire remains. Also, Xaden tells us that the place he envisions when he shields is quote-unquote near what's left of Orisha, which we know now was vaguely worded on purpose, because what Violet assumes is left is decimated, but Xaden knows it has been rebuilt. So, there was this moment that really stood out to me when Violet is describing the process of learning to shield. She says, sense who and what has access around you. And I'm assuming she's talking about to her archives, to her mind. This would imply that riders would be able to tell if an intrinsic who has access to their mind is around them. But that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But what else could it mean? Who and what has access around you? And this could be written off as their bond through their dragons, but that wouldn't explain it for anyone else. Like, who and what has access? Okay, Taryn and Darda, Xaden. But why would it be who and what? Normally, it would just be their one dragon. Who and what? That seems...
What is the what?
The logic is contradicting there.
Good point.
I don't have an explanation, but I had to point it out.
Yeah.
And finally, Violet mentions that in the 4th week of January, it's the coldest weather she has ever experienced at Basgiath. And this stood out to me because I'm wondering if there's any significance of the coldest weather, because Rebecca Yarros has said in the Variety interview, we'll link in the show notes, that Orisha gets hotter the more dragons come. So I wonder if it being colder here means that some dragons have left.
Whoa.
I don't understand what else would have been so significant about... The only other thing I can think of is that their flight maneuver classes kept kind of getting rearranged. That could be that's the why was this mentioned to set up for this. And it only stood out to me because Rebecca had said that in an interview.
Yeah. And in my opinion, she's not going to mention that in an interview if it's something as simple as, oh, we have to move our flight classes around.
Yeah, well, it was actually on an interview about Iron Flame, and people asked, why is it mentioned that it keeps getting hot in Orisha? And she was like,
Gotcha.
well, that's because more dragons are showing up, which you think about it logically, fire-breathing beasts that are like 25 feet tall. Hundreds of them congregating.
Goodness. The dragons are coming to you.
Now for our overarching questions and analysis portion. We didn't count any moments of Dane reading Violet's memories in these chapters, nor did we come across any moments of scalp prickling, but there is a moment with Xaden I want to talk about. We know that if Xaden reads intentions, Violet gets the scalp prickle of him entering her mind, but if Violet sends the thoughts like Rebecca described in the London Q&A, and Xaden said himself, I imagine that would mean no scalp prickle because Xaden is not the one entering her mind. Which just implies there's more times than scalp prickle, right? On page 284, Violet thinks, Gods, Xaden looks good today. His brow slightly furrowed as he listens intently to something Lamani says, then nods. Hard to believe I had that mouth on, I can't even say this with a straight face. Hard to believe I had that mouth on mine last night. Those arms wrapped around me. Forget second thoughts. I just want more. As if he feels me staring, Xaden lifts his head, his gaze colliding with mine across the space with the same effect as a touch. My pulse skitters and my lips part. First of all, how many times do I cool myself off on this one? I think in places like this, Violet could be sending him this subconsciously. Like this is where he'd be reading those thoughts through his signet.
I had this written in my notes as well because you have got me thinking of when she is accidentally sending thoughts to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think that she was like shouting this in her mind and he heard it.
Yeah, after Rebecca said he hears some of the spicy things that she says, this stood out to me so much and I'm totally convinced this is it. And if it wasn't intended to be, it is in my head. And that's what counts, right?
That's all that matters. Oh, okay, you guys, that wraps up one of my favorite chapters that we've done so far, chapter 22 and chapter 23. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to join us for our next episode where we will deep dive into chapters 24 and 25. As always, we encourage you to email us your thoughts, theories, and suggestions. Drop them below if you're watching on YouTube or join us over on Discord.
Until next week, dearest fantasy readers, prepare yourselves for squad battle as we continue our journey through the Empyrean series. Oh, you're gonna wait. Oh, mine is itching. Okay.
Mine too.
That's gotta mean something. Okay. Drum roll. Oh, wait.
Let's look it up. Just kidding. Anyways.